and Amy's saying you only got 20 minutes to get it set in because she has given me orders that you get done at 11:45. Period. No excuses. 3.5 weeks ago, Ann and I were very fortunate to get to walk where Jesus walked. And the first part of our trip we spent in Jordan, and our son took us to Mount Nebo. And many of you may know the significance of Mount Nebo, but that's where Moses stood and looked over into the Promised Land. And I want to give you just a little bit of an insight into what it was like there. We all have in our minds a concept of what the land in Bible times looked like. You know, we know what we think it looked like because we've been taught that, and we've envisioned it since we were about 5 years old. Well, let me tell you, folks, it looks just like that. It's barren. It's desolate. It's not a place you want to spend a great deal of time. But when we went to the top of Mount Nebo and looked down, I fully understood the land of milk and honey. I fully understood the term Promised Land, because the Jordan River meanders through, and on probably 500 yards on each side of the Jordan River is this wonderful, lush, green, verdant valley where there's plenty of water for things to grow, where there's plenty of water for people and animals to prosper. But when you go 501 yards on this side and 501 yards on that side, it becomes arid, dry, desert. Not hospitable. And that's where the Hebrews had been for a long time, in an unhospitable place. Now the sad thing is Moses never got there, did he? He saw it, but he never made it to the Promised Land. And that's a shame, because it was beautiful. And as we went into Jerusalem, despite being 2,000 years later and all the modern conveniences and everything that we have today, it did look like in the old town what I imagined it did. Now, I'm not the brightest light on the tree, but when they pointed to a spot and said, that is where the cross was, when they pointed to another spot and said, that is Calvary, when they pointed to another spot and said, that's where the sepulcher was, I've got sense enough to know that it may have been, or it may not have been. But I also know that it's close enough to where all of it actually happened, that I was standing on holy ground, just like we sang about this morning. Jesus walked there. Jesus lived there. Jesus learned there and taught there and preached there and died there and was resurrected there. And it had an impact on me. And as we drove back from Jerusalem into Jordan, to mine, all I could hear was my father, who was also a music director, singing, I Walk Today Where Jesus Walked. So I didn't have any choice this morning. Thank you for listening for me, but I had to have that for me. But I think it plays a great part in where I want to go this morning, because the title of my sermon is Past Tense, Present Tense, Future Tense. Well, I walked is what tense? Past. Where Jesus walked, past tense. It's history. How many of you went to school? We all went for a little while. I'm not going to ask you how much of it, how much of it took, but we all have a past that's behind us. And just like I saw the Garden of Gethsemane, or what they told me it was, and I really do think what I saw was the garden, but I saw these other places, and that is past history. Now, we all went to school, and we all did this, we all did that, we all did the other. How many of you are proud of everything in your past? Raise your hand. Not a soul. Well, where I'm coming from is we come from a lot of different places in life, but there are a lot of commonalities too. That I have a past, you have a past, we have a past that's full of, for lack of a better way to put it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, I saw that on two people's faces. I knew where I was coming from. You know, the good part, I'll talk about that. I'll tell you about it. The bad part, I'm a little reticent to talk about. And oh my, don't even mention the ugly, because I'm not going to tell you about it, and you're not going to tell me about yours. But we all have a past tense in our lives. And you know what? Even though that past is gone, even though it's water under the bridge, even though it's spilled milk, that past still, to this very minute, educates us. It influences us. It informs us. It helps us to make decisions. Think of people that are no longer in this very room where there's enough love for all of us. Think of people that have gone on, that influenced you and helped make you who you are today. Gloria talked about my fan club. I cannot tell you folks how they influenced me, how they educated me, how they helped me, and how they bring what's past into the present. Now think about the call to worship this morning and Psalm 51 and David's plea for forgiveness. Who can tell me real quickly what prompted David's plea for forgiveness? What had happened?
Bathsheba.
He had been found out. His friend, the prophet Nathan, confronted him with his acts with Bathsheba. David's past caught up with him. But David is just exactly like we are. George, I'm sorry I'm rolling around. George asked me if I was going to do my nomad bit this morning. And I told him, yes, I am. I cannot stand behind a lectern. David wanted past his past. He wanted rid of the sin. He wanted to be rid of the guilt. He wanted to be rid of the barrier that stood between him and God. So what did he do? In the first 4 verses, he confessed, didn't he? He confessed his sin. He identified it. He said, I'm guilty. He didn't try to hide it. He opened up to God. And he said, this is what it is. And Psalm 51, we run into all over Lent. I mean, it's going to jump up and bite you every time you turn in any kind of publication about Lent. But David identified it, and it wasn't past, it's in the present. This is what I did. This is who I am. I am a sinner. I don't like saying to anybody, I made a mistake. I did wrong. That's hard stuff. That's hard stuff. But David did it. David did it. He said, listen, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin, for I know my transgressions and my sin is ever before me. He identified it. He verified it. Again, he said, against you and you alone have I sinned. And here he is in the presence and in the present, and I've done what is evil in your sight. And then he gets down on his knees. This is mighty King David. King David who can have anything he wants. And David gets down on his knees. And what does he say? What is his prayer? What is his plea to God? Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and sustain in me a willing heart and a willing spirit. Then we didn't read this in the call to worship, but I want to jump over just a few verses where it says, the sacrifice acceptable to God is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, you will not despise. They wanted to come into the present tense clean. He wanted to stand before God white as snow. All of us were born with a sin nature. All of us occasionally succumb to that sin nature. Lent is a time given to us to look inward. To look inward at the present. Where am I right this minute in real time with my God? You know, it's unfortunate that we can't have one of these. Anybody recognize what that is? What is it? It's a remote. You know, I cannot hit the pause button and make everything stop and think about it. I can't hit the rewind button and try again to make it right. I just can't do it. I am, and you are, living in real time. And it goes on. Not only can I not hit the rewind button and the stop and pause button, darn it, I can't hit the fast forward button to see how it's going to end up. Did you ever have 15 minutes to watch a 30-minute program that you TiVo? And man, you fly through the commercials, and you can tell that some of this is just fluff, and you hit it and let it go for just a minute, and want to get to the end to see how it ended up, because you got to get in the car and go somewhere else. Now, none of y'all do that. Maybe it's just me. But our life doesn't have a remote. It happens in real time. And it doesn't slow down for me to try to get it right. And it doesn't slow down for you to try to get it right. What it does is goes on. And we are in the present tense. Now, the wonderful thing is, the things that happened in the past tense, and if you listen to the Jeremiah reading, Jeremiah, God through him said, I'm going to create what? A new covenant. Where who will be forgiven? All of us. All we do is ask. Ask him for forgiveness. And it's there. We sang a hymn not about the past presence of God, but he walks now, present tense, with me. And he talks, present tense, with me. And he tells me, and he tells you, and he tells all of his children what? That we are, say it with me, his own. That's the good news, my friends. That's the good news. That he walks with us every step of the way. He talks with us when we are open to talking to him and having dialogue, and we listen and we hear, and he tells me I am his own. And what does that give us? the joy, go back to the song, the joy of our salvation.